The jester steals the crown. That's the name of the playlist on my channel of where you can find all the Halloween stuff. The jester steals the crown. I was just looking at this thing from last night. I reviewed this stuff to see how it went because I generally, you gotta know what you did from a different perspective. Problem most people have, I suppose, is that they think the way they're thinking at the time is the right way. And that's why it doesn't hurt you to take a look, to tape some of this stuff, look back at it later, just to see, let's hear it said out loud. Does it really make any sense? So I was watching this thing from last night, Halloween Reality Part 2, and I ran it out. It was Dawn of Betrayal. The Dawn of Betrayal. That's how it's said. I've had to correct people many times, and now I gotta correct myself. People get into your head. From 1999. And at the end of it, it cut off because, you'd do air check tapes, and when the tape was done, it couldn't record anymore, and you keep going. There was more right there at the end. I feel like I need to say it. I know I've said it before, but if you haven't seen the one before, you probably want to hear what it is that happened. So I was talking about while I was a traveling shoe salesman for Iron Age Shoe Company. Straight out of Andy Griffith's show. A traveling shoe salesman I was. And I would go to these different corporate yards and sell them fucking steel-toe boots and things. And they had loafers for the people that worked in the front areas that had to come out on the floor every once in a while. They had Harley Davidson boots, designed and supported by Harley Davidson, so the guys that rode motorcycles, they could get those, and all this stuff. Which the one woman that worked in the front office when I was a traveling shoe salesman, she said, according to her husband, you shouldn't wear steel-toe boots on a motorcycle in case it gets caught up in the tire or something. It'll fucking tear it right in. It gives it something to hold on to. Yet they sold Harley Davidson steel-toe boots. In that time, inside, I had a dream. I dreamed that I went out in the country. I was driving my car through like Nebraska, and there were cornfields, and it was the middle of the night, pitch black, just me driving as I'm accustomed to, and I saw this thing going shoo, 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 coming across the field in the distance. I said, what the hell is this? It was like a golden arc. It was going up into the sky and coming down, up into the sky and coming down. This dream stuck with me for a long time, and I still remember it perfectly. It was my calling. And so I pulled over the car on the side of the road, and I got out, shut it off, got out, and I went and I stood on the other side of the road and watched this thing coming shoo, 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 across the cornfields. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This big glowing golden arc. And it came and it landed like above me. And I'm standing there and it started talking in ways that weren't speech. It was communicating and it was passing all this information to me. And I was standing there and I collapsed. And I was standing there on my knees on the ground in the night. And I was just laughing and I was crying and I was loving and I was hating. And there was every human emotion just rolling through me. And I was like, ah. And the message that it sent to me right there at the end was, come back to me. And I said, no, I can't. I'm not ready yet. And it just went pew, and shot off into the sky, into the darkness, into nowhere, into nothing that we can ever see properly. And I was left empty. And that was the dream. So then, sometime later, this dream just kept, it wouldn't leave me. And I was on a mission, traveling steel-toe boots, selling them. And I ended up, I'm sure it was Santa Cruz. There's a Wrigley gum factory there. They gave me free packets of gum. Whether it was Santa Cruz or not, I'm sure it was Santa Cruz. These are old memories, and at that time when I talked about it, I must have been right, because it was only a couple of years since. We'd have little things in the morning for different shifts, you know. You'd sell to the night people, and then you'd have a few hours to kill through the day. So you had to find something to do, or you did find something to do. And then you'd come back in the afternoon and get the other shifts. And they'd come onto the truck and look at the display and go crazy, and you'd sell them the boots. But so there in the middle of the day, I said, well, I gotta find something to do. And so I went to this used bookstore. I saw a used bookstore there, and I went in, and it was just chock full of stuff. And I'm walking around just looking. And when I was at Michigan State, I took an environmental biology class that when I signed up for it, it was like called the history of life or something. And I thought that I was going to be able to learn what it was to create life. A spontaneous generation without pairing up with anybody. I thought maybe I could have vats in the basement, I talked about that, where I could just create life from the start. They've been trying it for years, but if there's anybody I know that might be able to pull it off out of a hoax and how things fuck up in a good way, it's me. I felt I could create life. And then when I got in there and we're just looking at trees and shit and not really talking about anything about how to make it, I was let down by the environmental biology class. So here I am in the bookstore, and I come across this book on the shelves, and I'm just suppressed by information. It's all just crawling on me, and I'm like, I don't know what I need. There are fucking words everywhere. And I see this History of Life by H.G. Wells, his son, Dr. So-and-so Wells, who's doctor, and some other guy. It's called The History of Life. And I got that book, and I read it, and it's talking about the venal nature. It's talking about all these things from back when H.G. Wells, the author, was alive. This is where science was. And I'm looking at this book, and I'm going, geez, man, this is common knowledge now. That's the way it's supposed to work. The stuff that they were coming up with was like cutting edge shit at the time. You get cutting edge shit that makes sense. It's supposed to pass into the public and we're all supposed to understand it intrinsically, and we don't have to worry about finding it out anymore. We can move on to the next thing as a collective. That's kind of how I figure things are supposed to work, but everybody hides their ideas and they don't want to share. So we keep fighting to get through the next day in ignorance, involuntary ignorance. Alright, so I gotta have this book. And so I walk up to the counter. I'm like, gotta get this book. And this guy, he's like, alright. And I looked, and they're on the little display cases, like they have Wrigley's gum and Pepsi on the way out. Like you just see it. You buy it because it's next to you when you're standing there waiting. I'll have one of those. It's all planned. It's plotted. I saw a dream interpretation book, and I said, I might as well buy one of those. And so I got this little book. I said, I'll take this too. And he says, okay. He says, you're buying these 2 books, you can get a free book out of the bin over there, the free book bin. And I said, wow. It was right by the door on the way out, where they don't have to talk to you anymore and you're not being forced into buying a Pepsi. All I wanted was a Pepsi, but she wouldn't give it to me. But so on the way out, I stopped and I looked, and in there was another dream that I'd had. The picture of the book that the guy showed me in the dream about his experience, everything was exact. Everything was exact. So I picked that book up for free and left. That book didn't turn out to be much, but it's a strange thing when you see something you saw in a dream and it's right there on the cover of the book. You gotta get it. I think what that book taught me was you gotta read bad stuff to know what doesn't work. But when I got home and opened that dream interpretation book, I saw arch. It's a symbol of God. And then I looked through even more, and I found the color gold, the word gold, whether it's a color or an element. AU, right? Yes. Aurora. AU, gold. It's not a color, it's an element. It also said God. So the idea of a golden arch is a symbol of God. And so I realized I had a calling like no other priest you will ever meet. You talk about priests getting their calling, it's usually they're sitting on a subway somewhere and there's a bum fucking masturbating and eating a sandwich on the floor. And he says, God called me. He said, I need to help these people. That's all you get out of a God calling from most of these vocational clericals, whatever the fuck they want to call worker bees. They'll never be in the inner circle with a fucking calling that small. But I had a calling out in the darkness. This thing saying, come back to me. Come back. And me laughing and crying. And loving and hating. And wondering and knowing all these sentiments in one place. And it's just it's a feeling of emotion. That, I suppose, is the history of a life. The history of life may be emotion trying to manifest itself. It may be that before there was anything alive, there was just emotion and it needed a way to express itself. And so, I got a very strong calling in a dream, but I'm stronger. I'm not going back. Because I'm ready, because I'm not ready, it may be because I'm ready to live without it. It may be because I'm not ready to go back. And if I'm not ready, I may never be.